Recently, there has been a spike in sales of my audiobook, The Regularity Analysis of Causation. Let me tell you a little about this book, and then I will treat you to a promotional excerpt from the audiobook itself. According to David Hume, for an event series to be a causal series is simply for that series to instantiate a regularity. According to Carl Hempel, to explain an event is simply to identify a regularity of which that event is the final component. Both analyses are demonstrably false, but philosophers have failed utterly in their attempts to identify the flaws in the arguments put forth by Hume and Hempel. More importantly, philosophers have failed quite thoroughly in their attempts to produce viable alternative analyses. In this monograph, the flaws in those arguments are identified and viable analyses of causation and explanation are put forth. Please enjoy the following promotional excerpt from the audiobook itself, professionally and expertly narrated by Samuel Unger, and available at audible.com.
How we know what causes what. According to Hume, we know that E causes E star because 1. E immediately precedes and is adjacent with E star, and 2. E similar events always immediately precede adjacent E star similar events. But this is not, at least not in general, how we learn what causes what. If it is known that, apart from being struck by ball A, hitherto stationary ball B was in a state of equilibrium, then it is known that the collision was necessarily the cause of the change in B's state of motion. But can it ever be known, it will be asked, that a given thing is in equilibrium in every respect but one? It can be known that, in every respect but one, a given thing is in a state that is sufficiently equilibrium-like that there was but one possible cause of some change subsequently undergone by that thing. If it is known that, apart from the nasty remark I just made about your cooking, you are in a state of relative psychological equilibrium, then, even though most people whose cooking is insulted don't go into a fit of rage, I know that your outburst was indeed the effect of my remark. Thus, if we know that E is the cause of E star, it isn't necessarily because we have observed some regularity of which that event sequence, E followed by E star, is an instance. In many cases, there is no such regularity. For example, the just discussed tantrum. And in many cases where there is such a regularity, it isn't on the basis of our knowledge of that regularity that we know E to be the cause of E star. For example, the situation. A child touches a hot stove and feels excruciating pain. He knows on that basis alone that touching a hot stove will lead to excruciating pain. He knows this because he knows that, apart from the fact that he was touching the stove, there was nothing distinctive about his situation. It is true that, whenever people touch hot stoves, they feel excruciating pain. So there is, in this case, a regularity of which the event sequence in question is an instance, but it isn't on the basis of this child's knowledge of such a regularity that he knows what caused his pain.